What if I told you, the greatest worship you will ever perform is not on the ground, but inside your soul? What if your heart has bowed thousands of times, and you never noticed? In the silent chambers of the human heart, there lies a yearning ancient, unspoken, older than the body itself, a longing to return to the source. Ibn-e-Arabi says, the place of God in the universe is the same place the soul holds in the body unseen, but holding everything together. And when the soul remembers this truth, it begins to bow, not out of ritual, but out of recognition. There are moments in life when you feel a tremor, a subtle pull within you, a feeling you cannot explain, a heaviness in the chest, a softness in the gaze, a quiet surrender that you never performed physically, yet it exists, and that is what I call the unspoken prostration, a bowing of the heart before reality itself. Ibn-e-Arabi believed that every human carries within them a divine restlessness. He said, "You are not seeking God. God is seeking you. That is why you feel that pull, that ache, that desire to kneel without understanding why. Because somewhere within you, thousands of silent prostrations are already taking place, waiting for your awareness to catch up. There are people in this world who have never placed their forehead on the ground, yet their hearts fall into sajda every night. And there are people who bow physically, but remain unbent inwardly. The real question is not have you bowed, the real question is, has your soul bowed? Because the soul kneels in places the body never reaches. Rumi said, there are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Some kneel through gratitude, some through curiosity, some through heartbreak, and some through the sudden realization that nothing belongs to them, not even their breath. Every truth seeker, whether in New York or Mecca, whether in a quiet room or a crowded street, knows this feeling, that sudden collapse of ego, that internal surrender, that hidden sajda happening inside your ribcage. This is the moment Ibn-e-Arabi calls the unveiling, when you discover that kneeling is not an action, but a state of being. You don't need a prayer mat to meet the divine. You need an honest heart. You don't need a ritual to bow. You need a reason. And life gives you hundreds. Every loss becomes a bow, every blessing becomes a bow, every moment of awe becomes a bow. Every time your eyes fill with tears without explanation, that is a bow. Every time your chest softens at truth, that is a bow. Every time you feel small yet complete, that is a bow inside you. Thousands of these prostrations live, waiting to be recognized, waiting to be released, waiting to become words, prayers, transformations. Ibn-e-Arabi said, your heart is a sanctuary. What you kneel before becomes your God. So kneel wisely, kneel consciously, kneel with awareness, not habit. For the true sajda is not performed by the body. The true sajda is performed by the soul. And when the soul bows, the entire universe bows with it. And when you finally realize that thousands of unspoken prostrations live inside you, that is the moment you don't find God. That is the moment you discover He was living inside your bow all along. When Ibn-e-Arabi says the heart knows before the mind understands, he opens a doorway into the secret landscape of human spirituality, a landscape where every movement of the soul is older, deeper, and wiser than the thoughts we tried to form about it. Because long before the body kneels and long before the tongue forms prayer, something inside us has already bowed, already surrendered, already whispered its longing to the one who hears without sound. And this is why sometimes a person feels overwhelmed by a sudden softness, a sudden pull, a sudden realization they cannot explain, because the heart has touched a truth the mind has not yet caught up with. And in that moment an unspoken prostration has already taken place, silently, invisibly, yet more real than any ritual movement, as if the heart itself has fallen forward in humility and awe. Every human has felt this at least once, maybe while looking at a sunset, maybe in a moment of fear, maybe during loss, maybe during gratitude so deep it breaks you open, and in that moment, you feel small yet protected, fragile yet held, lost yet utterly seen. And you don't kneel physically, but something inside you bends, folds, collapses, as if the soul bows naturally before the greatness it suddenly senses. And this is the bowing Ibn-e-Arabi speaks of, a surrender that happens without instruction, without teaching, without intention, because the heart recognizes reality the way a child recognizes its mother's voice even before opening its eyes. The mind is always late, always slow, always trying to reason, define, categorize, argue, organize, but the heart is ancient, and when the heart encounters a moment of truth it bows instinctively, like a needle finding its direction, without needing to think. And this bowing becomes an internal saita, a sacred movement of surrender that makes the entire being soften. And perhaps this is why, though many people feel spiritual moments in places that are not considered religious, because the soul does not wait for a mosque, a church, a synagogue, or a ritual. It bows wherever it feels the touch of the real. In a hospital room, in a heartbreak, in a quiet morning, in a deep question, in a moment of silence where the universe suddenly feels alive inside the chest. Ibn-e-Arabi believed the heart is the true mosque of the human being and that the divine meets a person first in their inner world. And this is why thousands of unspoken prostrations live inside every sincere seeker, because every moment they felt all was a bow. Every moment of gratitude was a bow. Every moment where ego cracked open was a bow. Every moment of clarity was a bow. Every moment of compassion was a bow. And the body may not have touched the ground, but the soul had already placed its forehead on the truth long before the mind even understood what happened. And this is the mystery that pulls so many people inward, because they begin to realize their deepest spiritual life is not happening in the actions they perform but in the transformations they feel. Think about the times when your heart softened, after being hard for so long, or when a verse, a quote, or a moment pierced you so deeply that you felt something inside kneel without permission, as if your soul recognized its creator in a fraction of a second. Because recognition is faster than understanding, love is faster than logic, surrender is faster than thought. And in these hidden movements, the real worship happens, the kind of worship that does not show on the body but leaves a mark on the soul, a worship made of sincerity rather than form, made of openness rather than habit, made of longing rather than obligation. And this is why the world often feels heavy until the heart bows, because the heart is always carrying unspoken prostrations like sealed letters waiting to be delivered, waiting to be acknowledged, waiting to be lived. And when a person finally understands that their deepest bowing has always been internal, they begin to trust their heart more. They begin to recognize the sacred in the ordinary. They begin to see that every breath carries a hint of devotion. Every moment carries a possibility of awakening. Every experience can become an entry point to the divine, because the heart moves first and the mind follows slowly behind, learning to understand what the soul has already surrendered to. And in this truth lies the greatest secret of the spiritual path, that the heart has been bowing long before the body learned how, long before the mind learned why, long before the tongue learned what to say. And once a person realizes that thousands of unspoken prostrations already live inside them, they stop searching for God outside and begin to recognize the one who has been silently calling them from within, through every bow of the heart that the mind barely noticed, but the soul always knew was real. Every emotion you have ever felt carries a hidden language, a quiet direction, a secret bowing of the soul that Ibn-e-Arabi calls a sign from the unseen. Because emotions are not random storms inside the human chest. They are guided movements, sacred indicators, divine invitations, each one carrying you toward a deeper understanding of who you are and who your creator is. And when you begin to look at your emotions this way, you realize that every joy, every fear, every ache, every longing, every tear, and every spark of gratitude is actually a silent prayer unfolding inside you, a message written in a language older than speech. And these unspoken prayers are the thousands of internal prostrations that live within the human soul, rising and falling with each emotional wave. Think about fear, the sharp tightening of the chest that makes you alert, aware, suddenly humble, and in that humility there is a bowing, because fear reminds you of your smallness, your limitations, your dependence, and in that reminder your soul bends, not as an act of weakness, but as a recognition of a greater power surrounding you, guiding you, holding you. And this recognition is itself a saita, an internal prostration that the body may never show but the heart fully performs. silently kneeling in the presence of the one who controls every breath, and think about love, the kind that softens you, expands you, makes you generous, makes you compassionate, makes you see the world with new eyes, and you feel something inside lower itself, something inside melt, something inside surrender to a beauty you cannot fully describe. And this surrender is another hidden prayer, another internal sadha, because love is one of the most powerful forms of worship. A way the heart bows without touching the ground, a way the soul recognizes the divine reflection hidden in the people and moments it cherishes. Even heartbreak is a prayer, a raw and painful one, because when your heart breaks, you are forced to face truths you avoided, illusions you held, attachments you worshipped without knowing, and the breaking becomes a cleansing, a purification, and in that moment your soul falls forward, exhausted, cracked open. And in that collapse there is a bowing more sincere than many ritual prostrations, because heartbreak takes you to a place where ego is weak and truth becomes undeniable. And Ibn-e-Arabi says that when the heart breaks, it is only making more room for God to enter, meaning the pain itself is a door, a saida, a reaching out toward the source that created you. Joy to becomes a prayer, because when something fills you with light, good news, success, a perfect moment, unexpected kindness, you feel your heart lift. You feel an inner gratitude. You feel a warmth that says thank you before your tongue can speak it. And this gratitude is a spiritual movement, a bending toward the giver, a bowing made of appreciation rather than need. And these moments of joy become quiet prostrations hidden inside celebrations, inside laughter, inside relief, inside blessings you did nothing to earn, but received anyway through mercy. Confusion and doubt also carry hidden prayers, because when you are confused you search, when you are lost you call out, when you cannot understand you open yourself to guidance. And this searching is also a form of bowing, because the ego bows when it admits it does not know, the mind bows when it admits it cannot solve everything, and the soul bows when it realizes truth must come from beyond itself. And Ibn-e-Arabi teaches that confusion is not a weakness, but a spiritual invitation, because the heart bows deepest when it is unsure, and the divine responds most clearly when the human says, I need to be shown, even longing the ache you feel when you want something pure, meaningful, eternal is a prayer in disguise, because longing stretches the heart, expands it, sharpens it, makes it reach beyond this world towards something higher, and that reaching is a saida of the soul, a bending toward what it was created for, a silent confession that nothing temporary can fill the space meant for the eternal, and every longing becomes a bridge between who you are now and who you are meant to become. Ibn-e-Arabi believed emotions are spiritual mirrors, each reflecting something divine, each capable of guiding a person back to their source. And when you understand this, you realize that your deepest emotional moments are not weaknesses or accidents, they are sacred communications, forms of guidance, forms of worship, forms of inner prostration. And inside you, there are thousands of these unspoken prayers that have risen over your lifetime without you even realizing. And once you begin to see your emotions as hidden sights, you stop fighting them and start listening to them, because every feeling is a doorway, every tear is a message, every joy is a blessing, every longing is a compass, and every moment your heart moves is a moment your soul has bowed, silently, sincerely, beautifully, in the presence of the one who placed those emotions inside you as pathways back to him. The ego is the heaviest veil a human carries, a veil that blinds the heart from its own truth. And Ibn-e-Arabi teaches that the spiritual journey does not begin with knowledge or rituals, but with the subtle breaking of this inner wall, because the ego stands tall, arrogant, loud, convinced of its independence, until life begins to crack it open, sometimes gently through love, sometimes violently through loss, sometimes silently through moments of clarity that arrive without warning. And in each of these cracks something sacred begins to rise, something humble, something pure, something that bends toward the truth without force. And this bending is the hidden prostration that lives inside every seeker, the inner saida that emerges the moment the ego loosens its grip. The ego believes it is the center of everything, the master of outcomes, the owner of desires, the controller of destiny, and as long as the ego stands unbroken, the soul remains imprisoned, unable to bow, unable to soften, unable to see what truly matters, because as long as a person thinks I am enough by myself, the door to the divine remains closed. And that is why the breaking is necessary, not as punishment, but as liberation, because only when the ego fractures does the light enter. And only when a person is humbled do they finally sense the presence that was always near. And this sensing becomes an unspoken prostration, a silent falling of the soul before a reality greater than itself. There are moments in life where everything you planned collapses, where a relationship you leaned on disappears, where a dream you worshipped fails, where a truth you denied confronts you. And in that collapse you feel a part of you dying, shrinking, weakening. And the ego cries because it cannot control what is happening. But notice what happens next. The heart becomes softer, quieter, more awake, more honest, and this softness is a bowing, because the ego fights while the soul surrenders. And surrender always feels like a fall before it feels like a rise. Ibn-e-Arabi calls this moment fana, the annihilation of the self, not the destruction of identity, but the dissolving of illusions, the falling away of false pride, the melting of the masks we wear. And fana is not something you perform intentionally, it is something life performs on you when you are ready. Because every loss that wounded your pride was a crack in the ego. Every disappointment that humbled you was a blow to your arrogance. Every moment you realized you are not in control was a step towards surrender. And each of these moments planted an unspoken prostration inside you. A spiritual bending of the heart long before the body ever touched the ground. Think about the times when you thought you had everything figured out and life proved you wrong. The moments where you insisted on your will, but the universe showed you another path. The moments where you resisted change, but change arrived anyway. And in each moment you felt frustration, confusion, maybe even anger. But beneath those emotions something deeper was happening. The ego was weakening, the heart was awakening. The soul was learning to bow, and every sigh, every tear, every moment of helplessness became a hidden saida, a surrender not visible to the world, but fully visible to the one watching your inner state. There is a kind of strength that only appears after you have been broken, a clarity that only appears after illusions die, a humility that only appears after pride collapses. And this strength, clarity, and humility are signs that the soul has risen, that something true has emerged from your inner ruins. And Ibn-e-Arabi teaches that what rises after the ego dies is not weakness, but illumination, the light of the heart awakening to its true nature, the realization that you are never meant to carry everything alone, that surrender is not defeat, but alignment, and that bowing is not humiliation, but elevation. When the ego collapses, compassion grows, patience grows, wisdom grows. The capacity to forgive grows, the ability to see beyond yourself grows. And each of these expansions feels like a bowing, a softening, a falling into truth, because the more the ego breaks, the more the soul rises, and the more the soul rises, the more it bows to the one who created it. Because bowing is not a downward movement for the soul, bowing is how the soul ascends. And every internal side raises you higher than 1,000 external ones done without sincerity. Inside you are thousands of these unspoken prostrations born from every ego-breaking moment of your life, each one shaping you, purify you, softening you, preparing you for a deeper connection, a clearer vision, a quieter heart. Because the ego breaks first and the spirit rises after. And in this rise lies the entire secret of the spiritual journey. The secret that the highest place a human can reach begins with an inner fall. A fall into humility, into truth, into surrender, into the arms of the one waiting for you, beneath every broken piece of who you thought you were. Ibn-e-Arabi teaches that the divine does not enter the human heart by force, nor by ritual alone, nor by intellectual effort, but by the simple, profound act of letting go, because the heart that clings is closed and the heart that releases is open. And the moment a person stops resisting the truth of their life, stops fighting what is meant for them, stops holding onto what is leaving, stops pretending to be what they are not, that is the moment a hidden door opens inside the chest, a door through which light enters without sound, without announcement, without permission. And in that quiet entrance, the soul bows effortlessly, performing a prostration more sincere than any the body could ever imitate. Letting go is not weakness. It is not surrendering to fate blindly. It is the deepest recognition that you are held by something far greater than your own strength. And Ibn-e-Arabi says that the divine reveals itself not where you try hardest, but where you release the hardest. Because resistance builds walls inside the heart. Walls made of fear, pride, attachment, illusion. And these walls keep the soul rigid, unable to bend, unable to bow, unable to feel the softness of truth. But when life reaches a point where you cannot fight anymore, when you finally exhale and say, I surrender, something sacred happens. A stillness, a clarity, a feeling that the universe is not against you but guiding you. And this realization becomes an inner sada, a prostration made not out of ritual but out of relief. Think about the moments when you held onto something too tightly, a relationship that was fading, a plan that was failing, a dream that had expired, a fear that was controlling you and your grip.